just going to do a little intro for Moksha Canada Foundation. So here we go. All right, everyone. Welcome to Spotlight on Community. My name is Lynn McEntee, and I welcome you today. We're into a few of our programs now. By the time you're viewing this, and today we're going to be talking about mental health. We're very excited because Moksha Canada Foundation is making this happen. We're able to delve in deeper with our community members and guest experts to talk about topic matters that are really serious to our heart and close to home. We are a national organization, nonprofit, and we thank you for attending and being a part of this session as well and learning from our guest speakers and our guest participants who will also ask questions. A little bit about Moksha Canada Foundation. As I mentioned, we're nonprofit. And the purpose of the program is to raise awareness and find creative ways to address the issues that affect our diverse communities across Canada. We really are about connecting, creating, and participating with our communities and bringing issues to the forefront. So we'll start there and we'll welcome our guests. I'm going to welcome both of our guests. We have Sheryl Boswell, who's from Youth Mental Health Canada. And we have Lisa Browning, who is from 1000 Trees. That is a parent company of a few others that she does as well. And she'll tell you more about that. Again, our theme is Mental Health Canada. And I'll just have our guest experts just quickly say hello, and then we can introduce our other guests on the panel today. So Sheryl Boswell, I'll start with you.
Okay. Did you want me to introduce myself?
Yeah, go for it.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm Cheryl. I'm the Executive Director of Youth Mental Health Canada. We're based in Hamilton, Ontario, and where I live actually. And I just moved here before the pandemic. And YMHC is a community-based charitable nonprofit organization that's focused on youth, family, and community engagement for mental health, education, support, advocacy, and change.
Nice. That's awesome. Thank you. And I'll pop over to Lisa. Lisa, if you could tell us just briefly about yourself, and we'll open up the panel for a moment.
Sure. I started a publishing company called 1000 Trees about 10 years ago. It's kind of branched off, so to speak. So my underlying reason for doing so was I strongly believe in empowerment through telling our stories and speaking our truth. I've learned over the years that mental health is the side of things that I really want to focus on. So in the last couple of months, probably now, I started a branch. I keep calling it branches of this, 1000 Trees branches, called Roots and Wings, which is just an initiative, a nonprofit initiative to empower for mental health awareness and empowerment through creativity, basically.
That's awesome, Lisa. I'm following your work. I'm a groupie, if you will. All the different things that you're doing is fantastic. And I know our guests will probably enjoy learning a lot from you today as well. And one of our other squares that we have today, we have Anu, who is part of Moksha Canada as well and helps to administrate some of the programming. She is attending tonight for a period. So welcome, Anu.
Thank you, Lynn. Thank you for having me. And I'm really looking forward to hearing from our guest speakers.
Thank you. And we have bottom screen, Karina. Hello, Karina. And Karina attends quite a few different things through Moksha Canada, Youth for Change. She's a mover and shaker in the community as well, and community is doing lots of things with Ida Maria. They know each other well. So welcome to both of you for participating today. I love it. So Spotlight on Community, we're talking about mental health. And Cheryl, I thought I'd start out with you because it's there's so much going on right now, but in particular, I wondered if we could sort of break down and understanding what mental health is to you and in terms of your organization and the people and services that you provide.
Okay, so how I would define mental health and wellness?
Yeah, that would be amazing. I know before when we had met and we talked, we really branched out into a lot of that, but if you could just sort of focus on what mental health is in terms of your organization and how you are approaching it for youth. And
yeah. I mean, I think that I approach mental health and wellness from a lot of different angles. Because a lot in life impacts mental health and wellness. So all social justice issues impact mental health. Mental health rights are human rights. Disability rights, so mental health disabilities that are chronic and life-threatening are disabilities, and that recognition is really important for human rights obligations. So for me, in terms of mental health, and wellness. I mean, we sort of watered down the understanding of mental health. So, you know, because there's this stigma about mental illness. And so people don't, oh, well, you know, you're not really mentally ill, are you? You have a mental health challenge. And so we're trying to, you know, be polite about what are very severe and can be very intense and very challenging disabilities that can impact your functioning in every aspect of life. I mean, if you're not able to access an education as a young person, you're not able to leave your house, get into a school building, how are you going to get an education? How are you going to have a future, realize your potential, you know, all those kind of things. The same thing for the workplace. If there's not accommodations made for people who have mental health disabilities to support their health and wellness, then being a participating, active, contributing, important members of our community is lost. And when we look at the numbers of people with mental health challenges or disabilities, it's a considerable number. You would think with that number that we're all impacted, we all know people, when a pandemic, we're all talking about mental health and wellness. You think if we would talk about it, we would understand the severity, we would make the connection between mental health and suicide and talk about suicide prevention, and rather than increasing risk factors because we provide nothing virtually. You have to be a good detective to locate anything and then get on a wait list. And you know, all society is telling you is, let's see how long you can hold on. And maybe you're lucky and maybe you're not. So as a society, this is a huge challenge to each one of us to say, how are we taking care of each other? And we are failing. We are not meeting the needs of people in society, everyone in society. So when we talk about homelessness and food insecurity and job insecurity and all those kind of issues, when we talk about racism and different levels of discrimination that people experience, all of that impacts mental health and wellness. So, you know, you don't treat, so if somebody's depressed because they don't have money, they don't have a place to live, they don't have a job. Do you treat the depression or do you treat the lack of opportunities that support your mental health and wellness? So I think we do a great job of increasing risk factors. We don't do a good job of increasing protective factors. And those protective factors are everything that supports people's health and wellness, creates that sense of community connection and belonging that we know is vital to a healthy society. So these are not individual issues that you can say, just take better care of yourself, you know, healthy habits and self-care, which I talk about as well. But you can't talk about those issues in isolation from community care. And so, you know, when we look at intersectionality, you can see how everything can impact. And you would think in a pandemic that would be made clear that all of our mental health has been challenged because of the lack of certainty, because of this feeling of, you know, isolation and loneliness and lack of connection and lack of supports that a lot of people have that are very real. So, you know, there's so many ways of looking at it. And I don't think there's any sort of simple way. I mean, it's a complex field, but it's very individual.
That's why I invited you back, Cheryl. You're absolutely awesome. Very much setting the foundation for our conversation. And Lisa, just, I know, complimenting as well, just for all of her things that we're going to talk about today. Thank you very much for setting that. And there's so much more on a deeper level that goes with that, as you're talking about. Yes, intergenerationally, cross-culturally, all of those other things that go with that. And delving into that deeper is really what we should be doing, unraveling instead of the Band-Aid solution, as you're referring to. Interesting. Question at all from any guests, participants at this time? No, I want to keep flowing. Lisa, did you wanted to add in anything at this moment?
Yeah, sure. Just briefly, Cheryl, that was awesome. And it's interesting because I had written down some notes before we even started, and you touched on every word that I said.
That's what I was
Stigma,
thinking.
fear, self-care, isolation. Yeah, and we are failing, and it's very true. That's why I keep, to know that you're not alone is such a huge thing. And even I also publish anthologies of I call them empowerment stories, but there's stories of struggle. And even if one person reads somebody else's story and says, oh my God, I'm going through that too, it creates that connection, and it gives them, oh, if you got through it, well, maybe there's hope for me, which is a big thing. I mean, and especially in the pandemic, I live by myself, so I have a dog who listens a lot, but she doesn't say too much. So for me, it's been a real challenge. I've been home since last March, and I don't see many people. So yeah, it's difficult. It's very difficult.
Mhm.
Definitely.
Yeah, all of the above, right? Yeah, no, absolutely. So then if I could ask Cheryl, what you're programming right now, then your target programming, what kind of things are you doing to address some of those things that you are talking about?
Well, yeah, that's a good question. I mean, through our history, we're not government funded. We're not publicly funded. We don't have paid staff. So we've always been online, and I've been online for 8 years. I started, it was Youth Mental Health Action Group. There was nothing on social media 7, 8 years ago, 5 years ago on youth mental health. It's a new field for 99% of people. And, it was not, people didn't consider it important. And the parent blame that goes with child and youth mental health issues is huge. So, the lack of understanding, like we don't equate adult mental health with a lousy partner. um, we don't focus on causative factors, when it's adult mental health. So even how how these kinds of issues in children and youth they present themselves is something that is really new for people, the majority of people, to understand, what is emotional dysregulation and all those kinds of things. So back to, what do we do to support people, to provide mental health education? I think we're the little engine that could. I really believe that we're doing what so few organizations internationally are doing, that are publicly funded. So we're developing multilingual resources because there isn't anything available in different languages. That's the first step in cultural sensitivity for ethnocultural groups. Communicate, normalize the conversation, put it in languages that that speak to people, especially when we talk about refugee mental health or newcomer mental health, Black mental health, Asian mental health. These are new fields that people are starting to, expand. So we're developing a lot of digital packages in different languages, mental health slogans and infographics. So that's one thing. We're doing research on a big passion project of mine, which is school phobia, non-attendance at school, so exclusion in education. And when students with mental health disabilities are not supported and not able to attend school, so lose their education, the future potential, and quite possibly their lives, that is exclusion. If you don't provide the supports they need, whether it's that type of one size fits all school building, or you're looking at different kinds of needs and different kinds of supports, and really demonstrating the value we place on young people's lives with that kind of, innovation and the beyond status quo kind of approach. We've been doing workshops since last year, weekly Insta live chats in different languages. We're on all social media platforms, including TikTok. And what else? Our Facebook page is over 130,000. We are the largest online and most engaged mental health platform in Canada, and I would say largest youth mental health platform in the world. So we're doing the research project on school phobia and just doing the data analysis, and we're going to create a video on anecdotal evidence. So, you know, using quotes from families about the experience and sort of images to sort of those kind of stories, as Lisa was talking about. People need to hear these stories. And that evidence, lived experience is evidence, and it should have real value in society. There is no research on that in Canada. There are no educational accommodations for that in Canada, publicly funded, and there's no legislation, as there is in the United States and other countries. So I do a lot of workshops. I wrote 5 books, 5 mental wellness resources, including this one last year. I also believe in trees.
Nice. Very nice.
This is the wellness tree. It's a person in the arms of the branches of the tree. And this was artwork that was shared with us from a Florida mental health organization. I just loved it on Instagram. And I said, oh, you know, and like, I don't think that would happen in Canada. I asked for artwork and they say, sure. And they're credited, of course, but the 5 books, well, 4 the other ones, one has an iceberg, but the other ones have trees with different leaf colors. Oh, we do so many things. I just, you know, it's no end. And we're, you know, we got a grant now. It's not a grant, it's a donation, I should say, from a foundation to provide books for struggling students or families for free, and to provide subsidized or low cost workshops. So that's great. And then we're partnering with TikTok and on some really interesting and exciting campaigns. The counterpoint to Bell Let's Talk is do something, anything.
Well,
I know we won't go there about just talk, right? We're way beyond talk. And so great opportunity to be the counterpoint, because, you know, it's people are really frustrated with Bell Let's Talk only talking and promoting Bell. And this gives opportunity for everybody to do something. And we'll be giving suggestions like, I think I'll be doing pre-recorded webinars. People can take that and get educated. People can buy the books to support, you know, people, young people in their lives, or struggling students, for example. Or companies can say, I did something, you know, and you can too, and you, we did something for YMHC and you can too, that kind of thing. So, you know, really that I think the collective responsibility, the community care, the focus on action, it's time. It's really time. And I'm working with this amazing marketing firm. They're global, called Mindshare. I just figured eventually people would come to me, because when you work 8 years unpaid every day and you do good work and you make a lot of sacrifices, there's got to be a point where people say, we want to support you. We understand what you're doing. You are doing vital work and it needs to be supported. And so, you know, and we're doing a national mental health film contest. It's a pilot program called Directing Change Canada. We talked about that last time.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, for sure.
So the deadline is May. So we got a lot of stuff going on.
That is super cool. And, you know, with Ida Maria and Karina being here, actually, they're working for social change as well, and some of the work that they do in their communities. So for you referencing that, yeah, so I don't know if Karina, if you wanted to speak about what you do for social causes, and Ida Maria maybe jump in.
Sure, yeah. I just wanted to say thank you so much for having me, and so far it's been really inspirational, so thank you for that. So Ida Maria and I are actually in a girl group called Girl Power, and so not only do we sing and dance and play instruments, we actually have social causes, and so we advocate for things like mental health and give peace a chance, and kind of like similar things that you were talking about. And so recently we actually had a meeting with Stephen Lecce, who's a Minister of Education, and Ida Maria and I are doing a program in elementary schools in May for mental health, actually. Yeah.
Isn't that amazing, Cheryl? So it's just people like yourself that we meet, and Karina and Ida and Lisa, and we're all just shining light on the cause. And Anu, we're all here to shine light on the cause, and that really is what it's about. And you had mentioned directing change, and I know we had spoken about that before, and a really super cool organization that's now jumped into partnership in Canada. Could you speak to that a little bit more, please? And thanks to enlighten us about that.
Yeah, sure. So Directing Change is a statewide program of California, and they've really influenced so much of the United States understanding of mental health. Well, I wouldn't say mental health, youth mental health, school-based programming. I mean, they really do amazing things. And California is way ahead of the US in a lot of ways in mental health and suicide prevention. And the US is way ahead of Canada. And so they've been in existence for almost 10 years. They're evidence-based, so that means that they've done research to look at the effectiveness of the program. They do amazing things, and you know, really get a lot of submissions. And it really, you know, they use those 1-minute films, and they have a lot of categories as well for PSAs before films. In the movie theaters or on television. They've used them in lots of ways. In 2015, I reached out to a filmmaker in Newfoundland. We talked about this before, Roger Maunder. I think you've heard of him. He had made a 5-minute video called This Video with Amelia Curran, who's a folk singer, and a lot of famous people from Newfoundland, Mary Walsh and Alan Doyle from Great Big Sea, and a lot of people were involved in that. And in 2015, there wasn't anything on YouTube or very much about mental health, certainly not from Canada. And so it really shook up, you know, a lot of like, wow, you know, 5-minute video, like now there's like millions of things, you know, on YouTube, but it was pretty exciting at that time. And so I got to know Amelia and Roger. And so I said to Roger, let's make a 5-minute film on youth mental health, 5-minute video. With cue cards, that kind of idea. And I had tried crowdfunding and nothing was possible. And I had already borrowed a lot of money to support youth mental health issues. So anyway, originally that was the idea. Reaching out to universities and colleges, film schools to say, do you want to be a part of this? It was amazing, overwhelming response. In the end, 150 students from 3 provinces were involved, a lot of famous Canadians. We thought this, it turned from 5 minutes to 50 minutes. And we thought this is going to make a huge change. We're going to be touring everywhere in Canada. It didn't happen. Mental health organizations didn't really support the film. Unfortunately, there was a narrative that ran through the film, one family story, and then it was, you know, it was focused on action statements. And anyway, so that's originally the filmmaking, and all these people came together, wanted to keep contributing, and I, you know, wrote over 30 grant applications. We couldn't get anything accepted. And then I borrowed money to pay a lawyer to make our registration as a charitable nonprofit. And that took almost 2 years. So filmmaking is part of our history, and it's part of the reason we have a nonprofit, because I'm an educator. My goal was not make a nonprofit and work unpaid. You know, I teach refugees, you know, that's what I do. You know, and I've taught elementary, secondary, post-secondary, and adult ed. So I have that background. I've done workshops, I've done material development, curriculum and books and stuff. So, you know, I had getting sort of charitable status. I thought I developed proposals. You know, some proposals, you know, they got some traction in Toronto, for example, a mobile crisis unit of community members. I did a pilot project on that in Hamilton a couple of years ago, compassionate responders using placement students from Mohawk College and McMaster. But you need financial support for that to happen. And, you know, we didn't have it. And it was, you know, social change, how to understand why things are possible in one moment in one community and not in another. So I also developed a filmmaking proposal, a film contest a film festival type of thing, you know, because I knew for a lot of young people, filmmaking or video making, videography is a really compelling vehicle for mental health change, mental health
So very much.
education. And
Yeah.
I think it was 3 or 4 years ago, I'm a member of American Association for Suicidology, and I was in Washington and met Stan, who's one of the founders of Directing Change. And we talked about it, and we didn't have the money. But 2 years ago, one of the supporters that I worked with her and her family in Windsor recommended us to her employer, and they did fundraising for us, and we got the grant, we got the donation in February before the pandemic. And I had different plans. I was going to tour across Canada every month, doing workshops and bringing resources and really starting to connect with people in communities. But with the pandemic, we had to change direction, and I was going to have a Toronto base because, you know, we were going to have a base in Toronto because I was commuting and it was taking up too much time. So we had to shift gears with the pandemic, and we had this money and we had this great opportunity to use it in what was, you know, really represented a lot of our origins and energy. So that's how it's happening. And so I'm working with our partners in California to make it happen. We haven't had any national media. We haven't had any press releases, unfortunately. So it's just, again, social media is our vehicle for communication, and how we've really, you know, why we have so much national, international credibility, and people really value and respect the work I've done in you know, mental health, youth mental health, because of our online presence. So yeah, so the deadline's extended to May 1st. There's cash prizes, they're 1-minute films, they're doable. Lots of people are making TikTok videos. 1 minute is doable.
Right, and certainly interviewing the gal from California, the student that participated in that process, was so cool. She shot the film from her phone, and that's really what she wanted to share by giving advice to other young people who may want to try this. You know, just keep in mind, simplify it. You can do it from your phone. Think about what your message is, and away you go. You know, you can plan that film, that 1-minute film with a message. So think about it, Karina Idemaria. Maybe something you could submit to Directing Change, you know, or Youth Mental Health Canada there. That's really super cool. I'm just, I'm thrilled with all the programming that's going on, and filmmaking and storytelling is sort of where we might have Lisa jump in, actually, because that's Lisa's background as well, is storytelling, and she's got a huge variety of things to share with us, not only in this portion of the program, but we'll pick up on the conversation in the second part of the program as well, when our viewers come back for the second portion of mental health discussion. So questions right now for Cheryl while we're here. They're on Directing Change, her previous work, any programming she's doing right now, funding. No, I do think like the Directing Change, if we could just speak to that one more time, Cheryl. So if somebody wanted to find out about the program, how would they do that?
Good question. So it's on our website, which is ymhc.ngo. So there's a link at the top there to the Directing Change website, which is also ymhc.directingchange.org. So we've got the website in 2 locations. I've shared a lot. So I have some great placement students from Alberta who are creating TikTok videos explaining the submission criteria and the entry process, and amazing. So I share them on all social media platforms, so people can watch these short videos to, you know, that explain, or just use the website. And so all, you know, there's so much information on those websites there. That's what I really was so impressed with Directing Change. They explain, they give a lot of resources. So there's lesson plans and materials and all kinds of great resources for educators. So it's, you don't have to, you know, oh my gosh, I want to make a unit on this, and really encourage my students to get involved, it's provided there. And I've, contributed some things, and they also listed the resources I wrote as well. But they are very deliberate and conscious about, that this is an educational opportunity. So this is the kind of language that you want to use. You don't want to, like people first language, for example. You don't want to use language that's offensive or discriminatory, or like it's an educational process in making. You don't just make a video and there's no criteria. And so in the past, we've submitted videos to video contests, and there was no understanding of what they're looking for. What was the selection criteria? How were they determining who the winners were? Nothing like that. So I went to some of those when they awarded, like recognized the winners, and, it was the same class with the same teacher for 2 years in a row, and wondering, well, why them? And what are you looking for? And that criteria is very clear. And I think that's with directing change. I think, they've really, it's very professionally done, really well thought out, great educational opportunity. If we can wrap our heads around the language of suicide in Canada, and where there's a lot of silencing of it by people who are really misinformed or malinformed, so believing that there's evidence that if you talk about suicide, suicidality, mental health disorders, that it's contagious, using so old theories of the Werther effect, for example. And all the evidence says quite the opposite. The evidence says the more you talk and you give stories of hope, and you give stories of problems in living and surviving and thriving and getting beyond those kinds of struggles, it makes a difference. So, if I'm using language that I think articulates so well issues of suicidality, which are problems in living. So if you don't have a home, you have problems in living. If you don't have, and all those kinds of things. So if we can look at the challenges that people have in continuing to live, and we support people with that, with messages of hope, and normalizing the conversation that we've all experienced levels of hopelessness, levels of despair, levels of, different kinds of trauma, whether it was life or intergenerational or birth trauma. All of those kinds of things make us human. And I think we need to really step up this shared humanity experience. And I just, because the mental health field lacks a lot of humility and integrity, and accountability and transparency. I'm just calling it as it is.
Yes, it is. Yeah.
As it is. And, if we could just be a lot more humble, that it's a complex field. The brain is complex. People are complex. Their experiences are complex. The solutions are individual, and what people need is very individual. And so giving out these kinds of blanket, oh, we can't do this, we need to do this, it doesn't work. And I think we need to listen to people and validate their experiences and challenges, and, just step up, being really there as humans.
That's a good way of putting it. It really is. We have some future guests coming on. Monty Ghosh from Alberta, and he's a specialist in suicide prevention, and also a survivor as well, with lived experiences, in one of our future programs as well. Had the opportunity to interview a gal from NORS, which is a device that, for suicide prevention. It's a national approach to enabling people with devices, should they be in a situation and need to call out or they feel that they needed to be supervised during, something that's going on. They have this device that they can link into. So it was very enlightening for me to learn that. And the gentleman that will be coming on in the survivor later will be really complement this conversation today. So really appreciate you taking it there. And it really is about that. It's about stepping up. It's about all of us doing our part. It is an intergenerational thing. It's a national initiative. Should be taught very early in life, from the beginning of life all the way through, and supported at different levels, because we all do have a story and it's validating each other's story. So that's awesome. So beautifully said. And I don't know if we have any questions from our guests at this point. We will have a great amount of time with Lisa as well, to talk about and complement these conversations. Karina, anything you wanted to ask, or just carry on?
I was just gonna say, like, I think it's amazing everything that you were talking about. And again, like, I've had a great time during this session. And yeah, just thank you for having me, and just continue with the great work.
Nice. It's cool. And, yeah, it's super awesome. So then I would say cross-culturally then, as far as in really making resources available, as we're talking about, could you speak to that a little bit, Cheryl, and how important that is in programming like this to reach all avenues of our society, and especially newcomers as well?
Yeah, so I think, there's so much work that needs to be done in the mental health suicide prevention field. There's no end. And the good thing is that there's no end. Well, maybe it's limit, I'm human too. And I have a lot of energy. I have a lot of enthusiasm and passion and a real sense of purpose. So that fuels it. But I am human, and I do have a puppy. So, I do have to take breaks from the puppy, and hopefully the puppy will sleep the whole time this is happening. But yeah, it's so in terms of, addressing the needs of particular communities, there's no, so what I talked about, translation is the first step, and having multilingual resources available. A lot of this, we don't have money for professional translators, of course. So it's just using the language skills of a lot of people, and so of the volunteers. And so some volunteers, their language skills in a particular language are not, are sort of challenged. So they're getting them checked out by family members and that kind of thing. But I think that's the first step. And, I know that a lot of organizations are looking at how to meet the needs of young people in their communities. That is the first step. Those are publicly funded organizations that can really make a difference. I don't see it happening, but I hope that it will. We'll see a lot more materials translated. And, just because I think my background, I have worked with newcomers, refugees for years. I've always thought about language skills as barriers and obstacles. And also opportunities. So that's one thing. Insta live chats in different languages. So we have English, French, Spanish, American Sign Language, Signed Exact English. We're going to be focusing on Tagalog. We've been doing free workshops. It's very hard to get people to sign up and to show up for free workshops.
Yes.
Really hard.
Yeah.
People get zoomed out, everybody's online, and at the beginning last year, like in this late spring, early summer, we had bigger numbers, and then it just really, it's hard. So trying to find new ways of bringing, and it's that kind of do something. So what I have is, I have a lot of people call YMHC, which is me, the phone. It goes to my cell phone. I shouldn't say that. Maybe say that. Through VoIP. So anyway, in crisis, families struggling, what should I do? Young people struggling, what should I do? We're not a crisis organization, But if people have been turned away or mental health organizations have asked them for money, what do? I'm a human being and I have to practice what I preach, but also create boundaries. So, you know, this is an area that, you know, for example, yesterday I got a phone call from a woman in Chilliwack, BC, you know, about her child didn't have access to any supports. What can they do? I said, send me an email, and I can always give that information to placement students to do research and locate supports in their area. I also developed a very comprehensive COVID mental health resource that lists local, national, and international mental health supports, mental wellness, crisis support, community support. I haven't seen anything like that, because usually if people do a mental health resource, it's pretty limited. What everybody did one last year because of COVID. But you know, because our base is international, like our followers, I don't know what they are for the United States now, but for Facebook, it's over 20,000. It might be 25,000 now. So huge, 20% of our following is Indigenous. So, you know, and big supporters of YMHC, they're showing like great leadership as supporting young people in their communities, doing workshops. So I'm doing a 6 workshop series for First Nations school, grade 4 to 7, every Friday afternoon, which is amazing. And, you know, they're the ones who are purchasing the mental wellness resources and mental wellness packages. So I put things together in packages. So, you know, like really showing the kind of leadership that I wish happened in schools across Canada, or that parents, you know, and that's one of the things that we'll be seeing with that Do Something campaign, what parents can do. So often what people do is they respond in a crisis. They get in crisis mode in mental health. But before the crisis, there's so much that can be done by families, by mental health organizations, by schools, and it's not happening there. So the proactive, preventative, I don't want to say preventative, because, you know, it's not like, oh, you didn't do this, and then suddenly that's why somebody has a mental health challenge. But definitely, you know, for students in post-secondary or even high school, the level of competition and the pressures on young people today are immense. And they're without, you know, with very few supports. So every person in a university needs to access those mental health supports in the, so it's just the demand has really grown. So I would like to see a lot more proactive things supporting all young people, not just you're in crisis and then and people don't listen well in crisis, not the family and not the young person, because they're all in, you know, I need something now, but you have to wait, you know, and then you wait and life gets back down to sort of a somewhat normal feeling. So you think, okay, maybe I don't really, everything's okay, touch wood, okay. But you know, like creating a mental wellness plan, a safety contract is usually done in a hospital. So a young person goes to a hospital and a clinician says, I want you to sign this contract that you promise not to make an attempt.
Yes. Yeah.
That's not the time. There's a lot of evidence to say that is not the time, that they're not being you know, you haven't built that foundation of trust to have those kind of honest conversations. And, you know, so maybe they're afraid of being hospitalized if they say they're feeling suicidal or whatever. So they sign the contract. Yes, I promise, whatever. But, you know, rational thoughts and are, you know, that's a time of crisis, a health crisis. So a better time is really when young people are functioning, they're doing well, looking at all the kind of supports that they can put in place in an action plan to say, when I'm struggling, okay, let me go back to my wellness plan. Okay, who are the supports in my life? Who can I call? What's around me? And then be transparent. What supports are available in schools? Nobody tells you, right?
Very much.
So I wrote a book called Sources of Support, and there are hands-on activities to identify, you know, who's your social worker, who's your psychologist, who's your attendance counselor, what's their name, when are they there, and what are their main job duties? Because people don't know. There's confusion about what is the difference between those roles. And I think we can't just say reach out and talk if we don't make safe places and safe with safe people and safe connections, but also if we don't reach in, and if we don't say who is available, right? So all of those things need to be a lot more clear.
Thank you very much. Questions or input? Yes, I know Lisa's got a lot she's probably going to be sharing. She's probably saving it all up for when we get an opportunity. I think it's speaking to what you were saying before, is the human right component. It really is a framework that we need to put in place for everyone's wellness, right? That's really what you're speaking to. And one of our guests we had previously, former Lieutenant Governor David Onley, was speaking to that, the wellness of accessibility and how important that is in our lives, you know, with participants. So now, did you have your hand up? Yeah.
I just have a question.
Yes.
Like, what do you, maybe you can explain what is the cause, like the major cause of the mental stress? I know financial and all that stuff, but personally, what do you think? What is the major cause of this mental stress and mental health problem? In your idea, like in your way.
Gosh, well, I mean, you know, I think so people that I know who, you know, and that's one of the questions that families start to look at is patterns. So I would say that, you know, the people that I know, families I know who've had issues from a young age, you know, dealt with child mental health issues, phobias, those kinds of things, that birth trauma, so difficult birth for whatever reason, maybe it was a long labor, fetal distress of some kind, lack of fetal movement, all of that can impact a young person. Well, it can cause the distress can have, and there's a lot of research now, can have a lot of impact and result in mental health challenges, learning disabilities, other kinds of issues. Intergenerational, so if, you know, all of that has really huge implications for family structures as they deal with issues of poverty and abuse, and that those patterns that continue without that kind of understanding of those issues. I think the way that society's framed in that way, the loss of connection and community and a sense of belonging, you know, that there's just so many issues, the level of harassment and bullying that happens. I think adults really modeling really unhealthy ways of and damaging ways of communicating. I'm not going to say it's young people. I think, you know, I'm on, you know, being online and doing social media, you see that a lot of adults are challenged on how to communicate in a respectful, positive way. I think, you know, and that's, so what are we teaching young people? You know, and how that's sort of reinforced through, I think the pressures that we put on young people through high school, that, you know, you have to make decisions about your future, and that you have to, you know, the competition to get into university and the marks that are required. And I mean, like, I didn't feel that kind of stress in high school or in university. So it just wasn't a, you know, a feeling that most people had. Were there people who had depression or substance use disorders or anxiety issues when I was? Of course, right? It's not that it's, you know, we talk about it more. Is it more prevalent? I don't know. But certainly there's a lot more pressures on families, on society, and lack of support. So, you know, when you see the kinds of issues that happen for families, and that we don't look at supporting the families, but it's always a punitive approach, a judging, blaming, shaming kind of approach, and not let's do what we can to support young people and their families, when that should be our go-to, not what are you doing wrong, And that's always a message that comes, especially at mothers. There's always this sort of, focus on what mothers are doing or not doing. I'm not going to go there because I just think there's been so much damage that has been caused, and it just, we need to do much better at supporting young people and their families. I think we, in the pandemic, the positives of the pandemic have redefined how we work, and which is a great thing. And we haven't had this level of social change for a long time. And there's great opportunities being home-based, being, more together as a family, not commuting, the levels. Okay, so a lot of media are talking about are really presenting things as alarmist and crisis driven. But what I know to be true is that a lot of families are reporting a lot less stress and anxiety that their children are feeling because of being at home and spending more quality time with families. The school intensifies a lot of anxieties that young people feel. And, we think, oh, the school is a place where there's trusted adults and they're, the gatekeepers for mental health, when in fact, for a lot of young people, it adds layers of stress and mental health issues for young people. So it's just so complex, the issues for young people.
Multi-layered. That's a great question, Sunil. Yeah.
Well, just adding up on that, like if you think about 30, 40 years ago, people still have the mental stress, but not that big level like what we have now.
Mhm.
Schools were there, same thing. Schools are now still same thing. So like I was talking to somebody a couple of weeks ago, and one of the secretaries doctor, like he was in the one of the show event, and he said the main reason is communication, because people don't talk to each other. Before, people used to talk anything in their mind that they talk, so it goes out half things. So these days people don't talk, even restaurants, whatever, Wi-Fi, when you go see the families for dinner, everybody on their cell phones.
Mm.
So
Yeah,
that's
no.
one of the cause. And a lot of restaurants now in Europe, like Eastern Europe and stuff, they, like over here in North America, they said we have a free Wi-Fi. They said we don't have a Wi-Fi. This is a family restaurant.
Mhm.
So things are
Whoa.
changing, going back.
Challenging to that, yeah. But I would have to say that previous generations didn't talk about it. They, stuffed a lot of things down. So people who've experienced war, the Holocaust, poverty and abuse, didn't talk about those issues. My parents' generation and prior generations, they stuffed all their feelings. You don't talk, you don't air your dirty laundry, you don't talk about those things. You just get on with life because you don't have a choice. And is that a healthy way? It's not, I can tell you. I think that when we keep things inside, we're like sponges and all that kind of stuff comes out. And it comes out, unfortunately, on in our children, and it influences, impacts all our connections and relationships with people. So, learning skills and how to communicate, how to name your feelings, talk about your feelings, do something about your feelings, move through your feelings. Those are skills, those are life skills. And for, if you grew up in a family, you didn't talk about those things, these are skills for adults. And they're, definitely skills that everybody, all people need, because that's just part of really dealing with life in healthy kind of ways that help us function as healthy people.
That's incredible. No, it's awesome. So in the first portion of this program in mental health, we were wanting to sort of set the foundation for you, Cheryl, as a guest speaker, because I know that storytelling is so important in our communities and validating each other's stories. And that's kind of what we're really all talking about, listening and being present I think right now more than ever, learning to be present with each other is so important. And I know when we get an opportunity to speak to Lisa and about her initiatives for 1,000 Trees, we'll get an understanding of storytelling and how important it is in the network that she has created. So we will, in a couple of moments, we're going to be wrapping up the portion of this program for this session. And if there's any questions we kind of want to field to Cheryl, we'll probably do that now. And then when we visit with our viewers next time, we will be picking up the conversation with Cheryl and jumping into Lisa and her network of storytelling through 1,000 Trees and Roots and Wings and Saplings, which we have yet to discover for some of our guests here tonight. So yes, any questions at all at this moment for moving forward in our communities, accessibility, resources, other things for Cheryl perhaps?
I don't have a question, but I just want to add some more things, like, you know,
yes.
like if somebody have a stress these days, like, you know, a lot of stress for so many things. So first thing they say, you know what, let me Google it. And Google say this medicine or this medicine. And if you go to the doctor give you medicine, doctor send you like a, you know, wherever different other specialist doctors and stuff. And then end of the day, they give you one medicine to sleep so you can relax. So, you know, the same thing like back old days, like whenever people have a stress or something, they take a nap, relax. So, you know, like a lot of similar things, but things have changed. A lot of things have changed. People are not going to the, like those natural, normal things, like enough sleep, because every time in the nighttime, daytime, every time fingers are moving, eyes are moving, not enough sleep, not enough food. You know, I'm just saying, like those things also matter.
Yeah.
So
like
that's like
overscheduling.
adding on the stress and stress more like that, you know. That's what I just want to add.
Overscheduling, totally all the way. And all of us can, I think, attest to that in our lives. And I think the society has shifted in that regard. And even from the teaching background for many people here today, it's just really, all of us are teachers in life, but we all observe the change in the behavior of children because we're going all the time, right? Yeah. Ida, Maria, and Karina, any questions at all, sort of observations or collaborations you wanted to mention, or anything while we are in this portion of the program before we sign off for the next session?
I was just wondering, what's the Facebook group that you mentioned called?
Oh, just on mute, go ahead.
So it's Youth Mental Health Canada. We're on Facebook, and Instagram is youth_mental_health. Twitter is at YMH Canada, and TikTok is at Youth Mental Health Canada. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
That's cool. Anu or Ida Maria, anyone else at this time? No, I think that's, you've really set the tone for it. And that's why we wanted to do a 2-week theme for this, because we felt an hour is never enough to talk, because there's so much to cover in an hour. And we really appreciate it, just really setting the tone for that. Please keep in mind if there's anything you wanted to suggest for Moksha Canada Foundation, we're always looking for new ideas. Reach out to us on social media. We really are here to have this conversation because of Moksha Canada Foundation. And actually Sunil Janan, who is our founder, who's behind the Moksha Canada Square there. We thank you for allowing this to happen and allow us to have our participants in our communities raise the conversation, because it really is a national conversation. We thank all of you for allowing us to have the conversation with Cheryl and Lisa and Karina, Ida Maria, Anu and Sunil for mental health. And please join us for the next session. We are signing off today, and we look forward to seeing you the second portion of mental health. Spotlight on Community. My name is Lynn McEntee. Thank you for joining us.